know you're all aware that we're working real hard, and committees are on top of committees right now, so I appreciate your patience to be in this room. We will convene the Human Resources Subcommittee meeting and appropriations and begin, and I believe first up we have the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disability. Commissioner Berry.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Madam Chair and distinguished members of the committee. It's an honor to be here. It seems like every day something new comes up that you just get amazed about. At 9:26 on Saturday night, I got an email from Representative Brockway wanting to know how we could recognize some of the phenomenal work that was done during the snowstorm. And again, just another one of those where you don't realize just how many people are concerned about the people that we serve. And for you to reach out on a Saturday night at 9:26 was just phenomenal, and I want to thank you for that. Your support does not go unnoticed, and that was one of those times where it just goes above and beyond. So thank you very much. I also wanted just to take a brief moment to recognize a couple of individuals. Matt Anderson, who's our lead engineer at Georgia Regional Hospital in Atlanta during the storm last week, worked 48 hours straight, multiple shifts, 48 hours, making sure that every aspect of that hospital was kept open. When a lot of people were trying to figure out how to go home, he was figuring out how to stay and what to do. Royce Bottoms, our safety officer, Matt's been with us for 12 years. Royce, a fairly new employee who had been with us for 7 months, he also worked 48 hours straight and was one of those people that figured out how to get into work instead of trying to figure out how to get home. And it was just story after story. We've got Diane Willish, who's in the audience today. She had a group of 5 individuals who were trapped on the interstate with 5 individuals with developmental disabilities. And they stayed on the road for over 24 hours and figured out how to keep them safe and out of harm's way. And what a remarkable job that was done from Diane and some of her staff. Story after story of pharmacists who came in. One drove 6 hours to get into work and then stayed for another 36 hours. These are both public and private providers who just went above and beyond when everybody else was in such a terrible situation. So the reason I bring that up is the people that we care for had people delivering phenomenal care during this storm, and I certainly want to recognize these are just a few of the people. On our website, we've posted several other announcements about it, but thank you for just giving me a brief moment to recognize some of those individuals. I think you have in front of you our 2015 budget presentation. I know we spoke several weeks ago. Our agency priorities and funding mechanisms are very similar. We'll talk a little bit about, if you go to page 4, our 2015 priorities. Again, everything that we focus on is easy access to high-quality services so that people can live a life of recovery and independence in their own communities. I want to be real clear with everybody. As you see, the budget is a little bit more complicated than 14. The 15 budget really continues the movement of building communities. But I think one of the points that I really want to stress is that our hospitals play a significant role in our overall continuum of care that we offer to our individuals. We will have hospital beds available for individuals that have long-term chronic behavioral health issues that need a hospital bed. We also will have hospital beds for those people who have a forensic issue that they're dealing with. So our goal is to keep our communities as safe as possible, and we believe that the hospital system plays a vital role in that. The additional components to this, though, are that we hear very loudly and clearly from across the state, people don't want to travel far distances to get their care. And so if we're going to be able to build communities, the dollars that we're asking your support for will help build those communities to allow people to stay in their own homes and get the care that they need prior to it becoming a crisis. However, once it becomes a crisis, you'll see in this budget, what we have to do is ensure that we have crisis services available for those individuals that need that, and that we have a full array of services, a lot of what the settlement agreement provides for, those full array of services, so that people can receive their services closer to home. So you'll see building community services to meet the consumer needs. I don't want to go through line by line, but the biggest issue that we're challenged with, of course, is we are winding down the settlement agreement with the United States Department of Justice. This is year 4, and we're getting close. On the behavioral health side, we're doing exceptionally well, as we conveyed a couple of weeks ago. The developmental disability side, we'll talk about that a little bit more in a few minutes. But on the mental health side, we are very, very close to being in full compliance, which is just an unbelievable job that both the staff that we work with at 2 Peachtree and our regional offices, and most importantly, the providers that are delivering this care are helping us meet the settlement agreement goals. The CRIPA settlement agreement, those dollars that you put in place several years ago to help us shore up the hospital system, they have gone to good use. We are expecting a letter any day stating that we have fulfilled the CRIPA settlement agreement, which is just a monumental task that you should be very, very proud of the dollars that you allocated and of our state resources that were used in the state hospitals to get us in compliance. Some of our biggest challenges, the priorities are hospital transitions. Those individuals, especially with developmental disabilities, that are transitioning into the community, those transitions have proven to be, and I just left a meeting back at the office where we had 60 of our developmental disabilities experts around the state at central office talking about how we're going to ensure that when we transition individuals to the community from our hospitals, they will have a successful, high-quality transition. And then finally, the managing of the growing behavioral health Medicaid costs, and that's something that we need to keep a close eye on. You'll see the agency funding needs and where these sources come from. I think one of the points that I really want to focus on is that we have self-funded the majority of the dollars that we're requesting for 2015, meaning that we have found dollars from our hospital system and from other efficiencies that we're using to help build the communities. The dollars are broken down, and you can see that in front of you, state appropriations, the hospital savings and the self-finance, and then finally the Medicaid and BIP savings, a total of $63 million. I think, again, every dollar that we're using is to go to building communities, making certain that our hospitals stay intact and thrive, but the majority of these requests are for building communities. And doing, again, as Chair Dempsey certainly recognizes from the area that she comes from, fulfilling what we started in Region 1, but making certain that where we've closed other hospitals, that we do a better job on building that continuum. If you look at the agency funding outcomes, and I think this is where people want to know, and if I were in your seat, the very difficult seat that you sit in, which I'm learning a little bit about because I've been asked for a lot of money recently, and I know you all get asked all of the time for, can you give me $50,000? Can you give me $100,000? All I need is a couple of million. We've been told, we were asked one time, for $30 million, we'll show you how we can deliver better care than what you're getting. But I think it's important for you to see where your dollars are going. And the ACT teams, for instance, 22 assertive community treatment teams. These are settlement agreement services. The CST, community support teams, the intensive case management teams, housing assistance, employment assistance, mobile crisis stabilization units, behavioral health crisis service centers. Those are the newest model that we're implementing, where sheriffs will be able to drop individuals off and then have them navigated to the appropriate place afterwards. It's probably one of the most groundbreaking services that we're implementing. and developmental disability, family supports, and waivers to get some of these individuals who are coming out of the hospitals onto a waiver so that they can live a life of independence in the community. It's just incredible work that's being done and something that I'm extremely proud of, and I hope that as we finish up the session and start doing more site visits again, you'll accompany me to see some of the phenomenal work that's being done out in these communities. And again, we could not do this without a robust array of providers that are delivering some of this high-quality work for us. Now to get into some of the meat of this, if you go to page number 8, again, what you'll see is a lot of transferring of money. For instance, and again, I won't go through line by line, but can certainly answer questions as you see as you need to ask. But certainly, as we close, for instance, the Southwestern State Hospital, there was forensic money there. When we moved some of those forensic patients to West Central Georgia Hospital, we saw that that unit needed to be bolstered up a little bit. So we've transferred money. Without coming to you and asking for a new state appropriation, we transferred money from our hospital savings to another hospital, or from our hospital savings to the community. So I think that's very important. Direct care and support services is another one. These are all, again, they ultimately end up being a budget neutral. You'll see on page number 9, we're getting the provide funds for merit-based pay adjustments and employee recruitment and retention initiatives. That's part of the governor's initiative that we couldn't be more pleased with. I want to remind everybody that similar to our provider network, our state employees have gone a long, long time without having a pay raise. And it is a very real challenge for us in our ability to be able to recruit and retain staff is becoming a challenge for us. I think it's something that we need to keep a very close eye on. I think Jeff Miner, overseeing our HR department with Mark Green, we're doing constant reviews of how we're doing in regards to this, but it is a real challenge for us. But something that we are grateful for, that we'll be able to at least acknowledge our staff, even if it's in a small way. I think that down the road, we also, and I know many of you have been approached about a rate increase for providers, and I think our department's position has been very clear. We do not disagree that our providers need a rate increase. Our challenge is we are asking you for an awful lot, and the economy is just now turning around. We are aware of that. How many times can we ask? And so I believe that as the economy continues to turn around, we will be asking and supporting certainly a rate increase. Our providers are in need of one, and we recognize that. If we go down to page number 10, you'll see again some just basic following your tracking sheet with 15.2. Developmental disabilities. We have increased funds for the community to serve more individuals than we ever have in the past who are coming out on waivers. Remember, when people come out of the institutions, they immediately go on to a funding source. For the majority of the individuals that are coming out of the hospitals, almost 99.99% of them will be on a comprehensive waiver, which is supposed to cover their total costs as they move into these community homes. There will be a few individuals that probably will have to go into a nursing home as well. The adult forensic services, as you can see, and we touched on that earlier, $7.4 million, moving from one location to another location. That's not a new request. And again, on page number 12, it's pretty self-explanatory. I think one of our biggest challenges that I want to continue to remind everybody of is the Medicaid growth challenges. As more and more people get on Medicaid, the challenges of us being able to do that matching dollars become a very, very real challenge for us. Historically, the department has absorbed those costs. After spending 99.7% of our budget last year, those dollars that historically were available to make up some of that deficit are not there any longer. So it's a challenge for us that we're going to need to keep a close eye on. The adult nursing home, again, These are services that come, remember, the Craig Nursing Home is Georgia's only state-run nursing home, and it's down at Central State. We had anticipated being able to close that on December 31st. We did not meet that goal. We've adjusted that goal, and the challenge has been, as we move out the extremely medically fragile individuals. These are people with tracheotomies, continuous oxygen, feeding tubes, and other extremely fragile conditions. What we're finding is that the communities have not been prepared well enough to serve these comprehensive needs. We've got to do a better job, and that's what the group back at 2 Peachtree is working on right now, of shoring up the community providers, not just our DD providers, but primary care physicians who have never served individuals like this need to be trained on how to be able to do this type of work. What we have found recently is that as some of these individuals have gone into primary care doctors' offices or even emergency departments, some of the doctors have never seen an individual like this and are convincing the family members that this is not a high-quality life that they're living and to do a DNR, a do not resuscitate, when they've lived in our hospitals for many years. We've got to get some of our community providers on the primary care side to understand this is a significant shift, and they can and do well when they're living in the community. I share with you that because I think it's important for you to understand some of the challenges that we're faced with as we move down the path of fulfilling the settlement agreement, and this is a very real challenge that we're faced with. You'll see on page number 14 one of our biggest moves, and a lot of people see this and take a deep breath. $24 million is going to the Department of Community Health. That's to help with the foster care CMO, and I think, again, the expected outcomes are that individuals, children, will have better service coordination, better care coordination, so that they will be able to get their comprehensive primary care and behavioral health care needs met by a single vendor. And our department is supporting both DHS and the Department of Community Health in this initiative. So some of our state dollars go to helping with that single foster care CMO. And then again, you'll see another transfer on page 15. These again, we put them in here this way so that you can track this along with your tracking document. We line them up so that it's very self-explanatory. So overall, you'll see a total budget of $1.1 billion. The governor budget report was $8.8 million. We're very proud of this budget. I think that this will continue to build our communities. I think that you'll be very pleased as you hear from both your providers, but most importantly from some of your constituents who are receiving services, that they're able to access those services in a more timely way, that they're able to not have to travel far distances to get care, that people who are coming out of institutions will be able to be on a waiver and have a funding source, and that the quality of care that they're receiving is absolutely incredible. When we find problems that address the quality of care, and we deal with this on a daily and hourly basis at times, we will address that with corrective action plans. The Department of Justice has, for those of you that may have heard that the Department of Justice settlement agreement is not real, just come visit with us on Thursday when they have their 8 attorneys with us. It's very real. It's alive. They were here with 3 SWAT teams 3 weeks ago. They flew in on a Sunday night and did unannounced visits for a whole week. Our teams were with them. We did find some quality issues with one placement, but the 7 other ones went very, very, very well. We have to ensure that the services as we move individuals from the institutions to the communities are the highest possible quality that we can imagine. And I think we're moving in the right direction. The team that we have at 2 Peachtree and the regional offices are doing an incredible job. The providers are doing an incredible job. I think these dollars that we're requesting will further assist in us being able to reach not just the settlement agreement, because we don't want to be a department that only focuses on the settlement agreement, but helps us with our overall mission of delivering high-quality services to people so that they can live a life of independence and recovery. So I'll be happy to answer any questions. Again, you'll see the focus on the future. The Craig Nursing Home is huge. The workforce retention and recruitment are real challenges. The ultimate loss of one-time funding, that BIP funding that historically has come into our hospitals, as those start going away, will be a challenge for us. The other big one is the real estate issues. What do we do when we have these massive campuses that are no longer being used? We're doing some neat stuff down in at Central State Hospital. There's some great ideas about Northwest. We've got to give Thomasville some attention and figure out about that. We're making certain that our policies and procedures align with this community shift. And then, again, most importantly, we've got to make sure that we are ensuring public safety as we move these individuals out. And I'll finish with, remember, the majority of the individuals that are coming out from the hospitals are not violent and aggressive individuals. If they're violent and aggressive and have been in our state hospitals, and it's been in a hospital where we're closing it, they are moving to another hospital. The people that are coming out are primarily people that have significant developmental disabilities. They're in wheelchairs. They may be in beds throughout the day. These are not violent and aggressive people. Those people are being served in our forensic units and in some of our other state hospitals. So thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'll turn it to you for any questions, comments, and we can certainly get into any budget-related issues. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, and I think on behalf of the committee, too, thank you for reminding us how the great care and how important it was during the storm. That, you know, we often don't stop and think about those kind of things. I know there was a lot of emphasis on children in places, but certainly that was so important. I appreciate all the work that so many of you did.
Thank you.
I believe we do have some questions. Representative Setzler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner, welcome.
Thank you.
Again. I did want to ask, and this is just a clarification for me, and we could
Yes,
certainly
sir.
talk offline if we needed to. I'm trying to break out the difference in the line you talked about, the transfer of funds to the Department of Community Health for adoption assistance versus the adoption services lines we see over in the Department of Human Services. What has the responsibility been within your department for the adoption assistance? Is that for a very special population?
So historically, our department has provided for uninsured children a variety of behavioral health related services. And with the single foster care CMO, the number of children that are uninsured in Georgia has significantly decreased. Now they're either on Medicaid, Peach Care, or one of the 3 CMOs. With the foster care CMO, it'll be one CMO. In order to fund that CMO, the Department of Community Health needed, and understandably so, because the dollars that we have to serve uninsured, they're no longer needed as much because there's not as many kids who are uninsured.
Okay.
So we're transferring those dollars over to the single foster care CMO. So that's what we talk about when it's adoption assistance. That's the single foster care CMO.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay.
And one last question, Madam Chair, if I could.
Sorry.
What was the discussion? I know it was perhaps more of a one-sided discussion than we would have wanted it to be when the federal order came down in dealing with some of these medically fragile individuals. I don't know if you would compare to other states. What was the conversation around that when this was ordered? I mean, were some of these concerns not seen? I think a lot of us could imagine very early on that this was almost inevitable for there to be some issues in the community transition.
So I was not in this role when this unfolded. I was in a provider role. I think you're exactly right. As the settlement agreement has matured, there have been, well, let me back up. Georgia's settlement agreement is the most aggressive settlement agreement in the country. The very specific issue that makes it so aggressive is not necessarily on the behavioral health side. It's on the developmental disability side, where the term all individuals with developmental disability will no longer be in hospitals. That's probably been the biggest challenge for us. I think, say that again, and the quick time frame, a 5-year time frame. So one of the challenges that we're faced with is that while we have a lot of providers who want to do this work, what we don't necessarily have is whole communities. It's one thing for a provider who delivers the homes and things like that. It's a whole nother thing that I do not think we gave enough attention to, which is the primary care issue that we're dealing with in the community. So I think from an overall perspective, we're using this as an opportunity to we were on, during, when everybody was working on the snowstorm, we were on a big conference call with the Department of Justice, a long conference call with the Department of Justice. And we've gone down the path of call it a partnership with DOJ because they want to use some of the lessons learned in Georgia as lessons learned as they go into other states. And one of the things that we've raised is it's going to take longer for communities to embrace this concept and be well trained to be able to handle this volume of individuals. For instance, in Georgia, moving well over 1,000 people out has been a challenge. So I don't know what the discussions were like then, but I can tell you what they're like now, and it's very similar to this, where we are very transparent in sharing with them every bit of data that we have to demonstrate. Before you go into a state and say every individual, you better make sure that your communities can handle that, because whether it's a legally binding document or not is irrelevant. If you have a community that cannot do it, they cannot do it, and you're going to put people's lives at risk. So one of the things, unintended consequences for us, for instance, was that we, without settlement agreement dollars, without a new appropriation, we had to figure out how to keep some of our clinical expertise from the hospitals to follow some of these individuals in the community. That's something that the Department of Justice had never thought about. We felt that in order to ensure that our clients would get the best care, we needed to have that link. And so now Department of Justice understands that. I have a feeling there'll be ongoing discussions with the Department of Justice. They're here Thursday. This will be part of that. I'm not sure that if you look at the numbers, there's no way that we're going to move the remaining close to 350 people out in the next year and a half.
Have you done this by clustering folks geographically and having,
so there's a couple of...
and this may not be the setting, man. I'm sure.
Yeah,
I don't want to...
we have, and we look at things based on regions. The other challenge that we all are faced with and that people tend to forget about is people get to choose. One of the settlement agreement premises is that people get to choose where they live. Just as you, and Department of Justice says this, I can hear them looking at me right now. They will say, Frank, just as you get to go and travel through neighborhoods, these individuals should have the same opportunity. And while philosophically we don't necessarily disagree with that, when you go to implement that, it can be a real challenge. So then you have providers, some of whom have probably called you, hey, I've got a home that's been open for 6 months. I don't have a single person in it. Why not? The department can't force people to go into a provider. It's up to the consumer, the client, to be able to choose that place. That's a delicate one with the settlement agreement as well. Okay. Thank you.
What was the date that you said that it would not be done by?
The settlement agreement is June 30th of 2015. And on the developmental disability side, if you just look at the numbers of people that have to be moved out, on face value, it's going to be very, very, very difficult for us to meet that number by 2015.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to get that date kind of in my head. Representative Henson.
Thank you. And thank you for wonderful work you've been doing over as Commissioner of the Department. You brought up foster care, and we have folks that age out in foster care. Mm-hmm. And they don't have insurance. A lot of times they don't have a place to live. They don't have the money to continue their education, go on to college. What are we doing to address that and to help the individuals that are aging out in foster care?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's probably one of the most underserved pieces of the population that we deal with. I think there's an agency, there's several agencies that have devoted a tremendous amount of effort to this. Chris Kids, for instance, has probably done the most groundbreaking work as it relates to the children in foster care who are aging out. I think one of the things that we're starting to put more emphasis on is how do you make services for an 18, 19, 20-year-old attractive? So, you think about when somebody turns 17, 18, 19, they're leaving childhood and going to become a young adult. You can't force them into doing things like you did when they were younger. So what are the types of services that can be an I gotcha? Without them knowing that they're in services, how do you get them to feel? So I think, for instance, Chris Kids has this beautiful apartment complex. It would be an apartment complex that any other college-age kid would want to go to. I think we can do a better job of partnering with the Department of Human Services, community of health from a funding source. We talked about this at the First Lady's Children's Cabinet 3 weeks ago, of this becoming an initiative of the First Lady's Children's Cabinet, because again, when the three agencies, plus then you have some private foundations who are interested in this work, in particular the Blank Foundation wants to figure out if they can play a role, so we've scheduled a time with them to see if there's dollars that they would want to invest. I think the biggest point that we can focus on is getting these young people to understand they're not just going to an outpatient adult mental health clinic. Not many people want to go to that. They want to go to something that's attractive to them, that doesn't give them that stigma of being a mental health patient, and we've got to do a better job with that. But it's something that we've been talking about, and that it's on 3 departments plus the First Lady's cabinet list.
If I could just follow up, you're talking about folks that still need some mental health
Yes.
counseling or issues.
Yes.
I'm talking about, and Chris Kids is fabulous.
Yeah.
I had the opportunity to be there this summer as several of my colleagues, and it's an amazing facility.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about the individual that doesn't need the continued mental health counseling, that just flat out, has aged out.
Yeah.
What are we doing there?
Yeah, and I don't have a good answer for you on that. I think it's more of a Department of Human Services with Commissioner Horton. Mm-hmm. It's something that we can bring this issue up at the Behavioral Health Coordinating Council. I think that would be a great agenda item for us to add to that committee. It has all of the commissioners of people that touch children and behavioral health related issues, and we can certainly add that to the upcoming agenda and have a good discussion and see if we can come up with some ideas.
And in all fairness to you, your role really is the behavioral
You're
health,
right.
and that probably wasn't a really fair question.
No,
I think there does need to be a coordination and to ensure that, all the sectors of aging out are
absolutely. And I think we can play a role with it. Because believe it or not, even people who say they don't have a behavioral health issue have one.
I can believe that. Thank you.
Representative Howard.
Sure. Thank you to Dr. Berry for your work and for the department's work that you've done across the state. My question is developmental disability.
Yeah.
As a young person, adolescent or child grows up to be an adolescent and now into adulthood, continues to grow up and become developmental disabled. Where in the budget do we address that transition of the, and I say that because I have some experiences in that area, or some I've witnessed, should I say, some cases where after high school,
right.
A Down syndrome young man, my nephew, what do we do now?
Yeah.
Parent question. Send them back to school just to give them something to do for another year or two till they turn 22.
Right.
And now at the age 22, he's way above his age. He's trying to, he's actually able to go out and do some things.
Right.
Is there any assistance or anything in the program, in the budget, that will assist parents or that adult developmental disabled adult to get out and find a job, or
Yes.
private industry, government,
Yeah.
helping them to become responsible citizens?
So we've got, so up until 21, 22, if they stay in school, the school does a significant amount of work to support individuals with developmental disability, similar to the question of transitioning out. Right. So then what? So our public providers, primarily the community service boards and some of our private providers, get state dollars, core dollars, to serve individuals, some of who are on Medicaid, some who may have private insurance, and some who have no insurance whatsoever, although most individuals with a developmental disability will have some type of payer source. So they can get some day services and day supports and some employment opportunities and things like that. We also do have in our budget some family support dollars, which are non-waiver dollars that go to helping support families who have an individual that otherwise would not be able to get services. So there is a little bit of support. One of the biggest challenges I think we have is that the waiting list for the waiver services is long. And I think the more waivers that we down the road open up, they're expensive. But the more waivers we have available, the more people will be able to get either a now waiver. A lot of these individuals that you're talking about would probably elect, if they've lived in the community their whole life, the now waiver. It's more of a self-directed type of service where you get to pick and choose what services your loved one wants or doesn't want. Mm-hmm. I think you'll see that in the budget. But there are core services, and I think one of the things that we can do is after the meeting, we'll do a presentation to you about all of the services that our public and private providers offer to individuals as they age out of school and how they access those. They're a pretty robust array of services.
Now, I've seen some of the ones where you have the job training programs. I don't know if you could describe them or would describe them as institutional type settings.
Yeah, so some of them are, we're and you may hear today, we're putting an awful lot of emphasis on employment for these individuals. Mm-hmm. And the best example is the site visit that I did to the Georgia Aquarium, where I went and saw 4 individuals with significant developmental disability who go to the Georgia Aquarium 40 hours a week to work. And they do tours, they work behind the scenes, they work in front of the scenes. I saw another individual, cannot talk, cannot hear, significant physical disabilities, who works at Emory, at the Midtown Hospital, stocking the the operating room medical carts, and does it every day. And these are individuals that may be something like you're describing.
Right.
And so there are some wonderful, wonderful employment opportunities. I think down the road, Georgia will begin to move more from a sheltered workshop supportive day program to more of a community-based employment. And I think you'll see over the next several years more requests for supportive employment, because that's what people want, just like any of us want. Okay. So, but I think we can absolutely spend some time and just go through point by point some of the phenomenal services that are available.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Setzler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You led right to the point I was going to ask about for supportive employment, and to kind of follow through on that, I've observed over the years, there tend to be real concentrations of places that can provide an employment opportunity for many of these people. If I ask you to, not to put you on the spot, but just if I ask you to draw a map in Georgia where each county there was a viable supportive employment opportunity for people. I don't know that it makes sense for someone to drive 2 counties away to get it done.
Totally agree.
Let's take their county. If you could color a map, I wouldn't ask you to guess how many counties that would be. My guess is there's a lot of spots on the map that aren't going to be filled in with real opportunities?
You know, I would have thought the same thing, but one of the values of, when I think I shared last time, I've now, if I haven't stopped in every county, I've driven through every county. And there was a reason for that, and that was to be able to answer your question with I've seen it. One of the most remarkable things is I've stopped, even in some of our more rural counties, is focusing on employment, because that's one of the things I want to see. I wanted to be able to formulate an opinion about what could be possible outside of the metro area. Yeah, it's easy to go to the Georgia Aquarium or to one of these law firms that has embraced this. Down in South Georgia, in probably one of the most rural communities, I saw a person with developmental disability that the school system hired. And I found out, hired over a dozen people with developmental disabilities to work in their food services area, to work in their maintenance areas. It's been remarkable. So we can get that map for you and very concretely show, but on a big scale, I've been absolutely surprised that there are really creative, supportive employment opportunities for people almost in every area of the state that I did not know about. And we can show you that.
Yeah, I'm not asking for the map. I just, so often
remarkable.
You don't have common levels of service.
Right.
And that's good to hear.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I don't see any further questions. I don't know if you have anything in closing.
No.
Or
Madam Chair, thank you for your leadership and members of the committee for your just ongoing support. Every day we don't take it for granted, and we'll continue to try to earn your confidence in us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. I know there are going to be some people exiting. While they are, there's a sign-up sheet over here for public comment later, depending on our time, on the corner here. And Commissioner Butler, if you would get ready for when it. Oh, you want me to? Okay. Yeah. Can we go ahead? We'll change that up. We'll let veterans. Commissioner Wheeler, I think we'll go ahead and do veterans next, if that's okay with y'all. Director Wheeler, it's so nice to have you with us today.
And it's good to be here, and good
Thank you.
afternoon. And I'm Commissioner Pete Wheeler of the Department of Veterans Service, and we're very pleased to be with all of you here today. The mission of the Department of Veterans Service is to serve more than 776,000 veterans and dependents and survivors in all matters pertaining to Veterans Affairs. Assisting veterans to apply for and to receive state and federal benefits is our department's highest priority. Last year, mostly through the efforts of our employees, Georgia veterans received over $2 billion in federal VA compensation and pension benefits, over $2 billion. All benefits must be applied for. And we have over 100 employees located in 51 sites throughout the states, ready to assist veterans receive those benefits. Our second priority is to operate and maintain our 2 state veterans nursing homes. And we do have 2 of the finest nursing homes in America. One is operated for us by contract with the Medical College of Georgia. And they want to make sure they do it right, and they are doing it right. We have the homes in Milledgeville and Augusta. These facilities provide critical skilled nursing care for Georgia's veterans. Our third priority is to operate the 2 state veterans memorial cemeteries. These cemeteries are located in Milledgeville and Glenville and are part of the nation's cemetery system and maintain national shrine status. We have a few concerns regarding our fiscal year 2015 budget recommendations, but I'll call on Mr. Dan Holtz now to address those issues during his presentation. Dan Holtz, Assistant Commissioner. Come on up, Dan.
Thank you, Commissioner Wheeler. Madam Chairman, it's good to be with you again. Our presentation is very similar to what we gave you at the combined hearing a couple weeks ago on the 2014 amended in terms of the front part of it. So if you want to skip over to, and unfortunately I don't have numbers on the slides you've got, but it's the 7th page in, entitled Department Overall. This shows the summarization of the overall funding that has been put into the governor's recommended budget. If you go to the next page, we start to break it out by program. The first program is our administration program, and basically there are across the board adjustments that have been put in here, with the exception of transferring 2 positions that have been in our Veterans Benefits program, and those positions have department-wide responsibility, which is the reason they're being moved over to the administration program. The next slide talks about the cemeteries program, and the figures here are pulled from the tracking document. Again, it's the items that have been added into the program in terms of merit-based pay adjustments and employment retirement system adjustments. However, there's a $35,000 item in there for a one-time pre-design cost for a new project to expand the size of the Milledgeville Cemetery. This will be our phase 3 for that facility. The facility was opened up in 2001. Phase 2 expansion opened up in 2010, and by 2017 we have projected, based on current burial rates, that we're going to run out of in-ground interment capability. And this partly was, well, not partly, totally was brought about by the fact that the VA on the phase 2 project elected to reduce the size of it from the 1,400 additional in-ground burial spaces that we had asked for to just 1,000. And consequently, we're going to run out of space a lot sooner than what we had originally projected. So we have already started talking with the VA about doing this, and we've got to do the upfront money with the pre-design and planning, which is what the $35,000 is going to support. We're projecting at this point in time that that will probably increase the size by an additional 1,000 in-ground burial spaces, and we should then get that facility again extended in terms of its operation for hopefully another 10 years. The next slide talks about a proposal related to the cemeteries. Currently, the recommended budget is broken out with $498,000 in state funds and $178,000 in federal funds, And our proposal is that the federal funds be moved into the state funds arena so that we have a known budget. And the reason for that is we have no real firm way of predicting how many veterans are going to pass away and want to be interred at the facility, or the facilities. Actually, it'll be both of them. And what we are proposing here is to put all of the funding into state funds up front, and then whatever we get in the way of federal funds, that we'll use that at the end of the fiscal year to offset against state. So that's what we're proposing here. And so the next slide shows what the impact of that would be in terms of total funding. The next slide talks about our 2 state nursing homes and what is going on here. Historically, the 2 nursing homes have been residing in 2 separate fiscal programs, one for Augusta and one for Milledgeville. And in conjunction with OPB, we have agreed that it would make a lot of sense to combine those 2 programs into one. It would give us more managerial flexibility in terms of the management of those 2 facilities. As Commissioner Wheeler mentioned, one of those facilities is operated for us by the Georgia Regents University, and the other is operated for us by a civilian contractor. And right now, what we're trying to do is increase the census at both of those facilities, but if we increase it to a point where the funding is locked in, let's say, to the Augusta home, and there's additional money that's coming in, but we can't spend it over there, if we marry up the programs together into one, then we could move some of those dollars over to Milledgeville if we needed them, or vice versa. So right now, we don't have that flexibility. We have to go through the fiscal affairs process or the amended budget process. So by putting them both into one program, we would have that flexibility, and the 2 homes would be organized into sub-programs under the homes program itself. We just feel that this is a better way to manage the facility, and we feel like we are capable of doing that. The next slide talks about a capital improvement program, and I know that that's not normally in your purview, but I wanted to bring it up because as we have looked at this, it's becoming more and more of a concern. And after the previous presentation on behavioral health, talking about the closure of the various facilities, the one that impacts us most directly is Central State Hospital in Milledgeville. We buy all of our utilities, gas, water, steam, and electric, through Central State Hospital. We understand that that facility is supposed to be closing within the next 12 to 18 months. And when that occurs, we're going to have a problem because we are not going to have the ability to get our utilities from the source that we have been getting them in the past. We've already made arrangements with Atlanta Gas Light on the gas piece. The city of Milledgeville, we understand, is picking up the water. The electric is going to be directly paid now to Georgia Power instead of going through Central State. But steam is a real issue. All of our steam, which provides heated water into our buildings, the steam plant is going to be shutting down as part of that Central State Hospital closure. So we've got to make a conversion in order to get heated water and chilled water from the steam plant, since it's no longer going to be there. And so we've come up with this project that is going to provide the necessary boiler capability, mechanical systems, the infrastructure and enclosures that are associated with those, and then just general requirements that go along with any kind of a major project of this nature. It was our #1 priority in the capital outlay budget submission, but for some reason it was not included in the governor's budget. Our concern is when Central State closes, if we don't have the fully capable facilities on our campus to provide the care and treatment to the veteran patients who are there, we're going to be in a big time world of hurt. And so we really need to see if we can't get this project put into the system and get it approved. Our last program is our Veterans Benefits Program. It's the last one in the fiscal listing, but as Commissioner Wheeler indicated, it's our #1 priority, assisting veterans in obtaining benefits. As the Commissioner mentioned, last year we brought in over $2 billion in federal compensation and pension benefits into the state of Georgia. We're anticipating something in the neighborhood of around 63,000 new veterans coming into Georgia that the prognosticators say are going to settle here, either because they are from here or because they've been here and have determined that they like Georgia. And I'm one of those, although I made that my decision a number of years ago. The point is, we're going to need to have some additional capability as we go down the road. The difficulty is for us, we don't know where all these veterans are going to go. If they settle in the Atlanta area, we've already started the process to open up. We've got an office, a second office in Hall County that we've opened up, and one just across the line in Gwinnett that is now open. We're going to be opening Fort McPherson hopefully next month. Every time we think it's going to open, the VA slips it, but hopefully it'll be next month. And we're working with Cobb County government right now to get a storefront office space in the Cobb County Government Center that is just north of Austell. Good. You know what the building I'm talking about. I believe, yes. And we're trying to work all of that out and hope to be able to move in there sometime within the next 4 to 6 months if everything works out. And that's an effort that, thanks to your assistance, we got the authorization for 2 years ago, and we have moved out and made that happen. There is going to be a need for additional growth. The problem is we just don't know for sure where it's going to be. But with 63,000 people coming into the state, we know there's a need. And we're working to identify where all of that needs to go and how much we're going to need in terms of space and additional personnel to support that need. We're very fortunate in terms of, along with those 3 new locations, that we got 6 additional authorizations that allowed us to expand the size of our office in Columbus, and open up an office in St. Mary's, and several others around the state to try and build them up. And so we're very appreciative of that. So we'll be talking more to OPB on this and to you as we go forward. That's all I have. If you have any questions, please.
Thank you. Representative Henson.
Thank you very much. Is this on?
I can hear you good, ma'am.
I know that you're serving more people as we have more folks being discharged, we have people living longer and all that are veterans. What do you anticipate your staffing needs will be over the next few years? Are you currently staffed adequately, or do you need additional staff now? And going forward, say 3, 4, 5 years, what would you be needing?
I think probably over the next 3, 4, 5 years to meet the need of those additional 63,000 veterans that are projected to come into Georgia, we're going to need some additional staffing. Right now, I can't give you a specific number, but we've got 776,000 veterans who currently reside in the state, many of whom we work with on a regular basis in getting their benefits for them, both federal and state. And I would think that we're probably looking in the neighborhood of another, I'm going to say 10 to 15 field service officers to support those 63,000. But at this point in time, I really don't have a hard, firm number on that.
May I follow up?
Sure.
Are you adequately staffed now?
For the workload that we're doing right now, we are adequately staffed, but it's tight.
Okay. Thank you.
Are there any other questions from the committee? Oh. Representative Epps.
Just one. Just one inquiry. On the new scheme of management with the two homes, what would be the management scheme? Since one is under the Regents, the other under a private contract.
That will continue. There won't be a change in terms of that.
Each will have its own separate.
Yes, sir. Yeah, there won't be a change. It's strictly how the funding will flow.
Okay.
Representative Harden.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Of the nursing homes now that you operate, do you directly have to have employees, or are both those contracted? They are contracted, I know, but what is the involvement of the administration in the running of those homes?
The home in Augusta, because it's operated by the Regents University, excuse me, they are a state agency, and so we deal direct with them. We don't have anybody that oversees their operation on behalf of the department on a daily basis. At Milledgeville, we do have two people down there who, they make up what we call the Health and Memorials Division, and their primary responsibility is to oversee the contractor operation of the home at Milledgeville, because it is a civilian contractor. In addition, that function is responsible for overseeing the operation of the two cemeteries and also all of our construction programs for the department in terms of our homes and our cemeteries.
Thank you.
Representative Settler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was interested in the proposal for the capital investment for the gas-fired boilers and mechanical system upgrades. Not to put you on the spot too much, what's the contingency plan if that doesn't come through? I mean, that's as I try to get my mind around that. There's always requests for classroom buildings and lab space and things. This is not of that nature. This seems to be more of a, gotta have it kind of thing. And
I don't mean to point fingers at anybody, but we brought this to the attention of OPB a year ago as an emergency item. And it was not included in last year's capital budget, and they told us to bring it back as a high priority, number one priority this time, which is what we did. And unfortunately, it didn't get in this time either. In talking with my Health and Memorials people and also our architectural consultant this morning, what I found out was that they were trying to come up with some kind of a 4-year timeline to work some of these issues out and spread that total cost over that period of time in terms of funding. But unfortunately, apparently there was an inability to reach an agreement on doing that. So the requirement is there. I mean, we've got to do something, and we've got to have the funding to make it happen. I don't know how firm the behavioral health people are on shutting that facility down in terms of do they have a definitive date. And listening to the previous presentation, I got the impression that it's still kind of fluid, and beyond that, I really can't say.
And I just ask, these seem to be energy-consuming systems. I don't know how efficient they are. I don't know what age the facilities we're talking about are. Do you know how old these systems might be, the existing system?
The ones in the Wheeler building, even though it's the oldest facility that we have down there, was opened in 1902, actually were upgraded about 10 years ago, and the technology in those is fairly good in terms of the mechanical systems. The Vinson building is a real problem because it has not been upgraded since it was built in 1968. The Russell building has had some work done on it in this area over the last 15 years and is in better shape than the Vinson building. The Wood building was opened up in '89, and the systems in that building are still operational and still fairly close to state of the art.
And I just ask you, your folks may have thought about this. You know, sometimes there's an energy play to be made.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we passed a constitutional amendment, I believe, a couple of years ago that allowed multi-year contracts for
Right.
energy efficiency. You know, and I'm not. I don't think the terms of those contracts are always good for the owner.
Mm-hmm.
But nonetheless, they are. It is a financing mechanism that's outside of a capital program that can be privately financed. You know, if you've got facilities that are older than or systems that are older than 1990, you probably could be a good candidate for that. I just say that.
Clearly, the Vinson building falls into that category, and so.
It just seems like a conundrum that's of another order
Mm-hmm.
than what we normally see.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Representative Oliver.
No, it's been there, ma'am. Okay, this is a combination. Okay,
It's okay though. I think it'd be good for you to.
okay, no problem. When the homes were established, they were established in separate fiscal programs, and they remained there in those programs for all these years. What this initiative is doing is combining those two separate fiscal programs into one fiscal program under which both State War Veterans homes will be placed. They will be downgraded from program status to sub-program status, and we will have flexibility within the program. If we have a need to make fiscal adjustments between the two facilities, we can do that. Where right now we have to go through the fiscal affairs process or through the amended budget process. And so this is giving managerial flexibility to the department to be able to do what we've been chartered to do.
Both of these facilities are long-term contracts for management.
Well,
I guess one of the examples of that flexibility would be to shift beds back and forth.
well, or not necessarily shift patients, maybe, but to, if needed, to shift funds. If we end up with suddenly a bunch of people wanting to come into the home in Milledgeville and we don't have the funding, but we've got some funding that's available at the home in Augusta, we could move the funds from the Augusta home to the Milledgeville home.
So you've got two different contractors.
Yes.
Management, this would allow that flexibility.
Yes, ma'am.
Would the flexibility of this new program allow either of those contracts to apply for Medicaid funds?
Not to my knowledge.
I think that's an interesting, obviously Board of Regents, the medical facility accepts Medicaid in their veterans hospitals there, so to the extent they're taking over this, I'm just curious.
Well, they've been operating that home for us since it was opened in 1968.
But they operate other facilities there, obviously, that accept Medicaid. I just wonder if this restructuring allows them flexibility to apply for Medicaid.
Not to my knowledge, no, ma'am.
No, it's okay. Thank you so much. Any other questions? Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
and it's been a pleasure to be with you again. And if you have any questions, why, Mike knows how to get a hold of me.
We do. If you have another set of the information, we are short
Sure.
one,
Yeah.
I believe. And that would be great. Representative Oliver.
We'll
or
give you a whole
Slaton.
handful.
Great. Did everyone get one? It's great. Thank you so much. If anyone has not signed up for the public hearing that wishes to make a comment afterwards, it's up on the corner right here, and then we'll pick that up and be ready after Commissioner Butler. Commissioner Butler, whenever you're ready. I think there's a handout. Does everyone have that information from him? Okay.
All right. Well, thank you, Ms. Chairwoman, members. It's kind of interesting to see some of y'all were still here from when I was here. That's a good thing. We'll go through this fairly quickly. I know the day is long for y'all, just like it is for a lot of people here. As far as going through the budget, go through that, fairly easy. Most of the changes in there have to do with the additional money that's put in for merit changes and also for the different benefit plans and whatnot. The only things I really want to talk to you about today have to do with 31.3.1, which is our state funds, the $5.7 million. I don't know if y'all remember this, but 3 years ago in my first budget presentation, back then we had a lot more federal funds back then due to the fact that unemployment was still high. We were still being able to pull down a lot of additional federal funds to help us run our operations. And at that time, kind of out of the goodness of our heart, we got to looking at the situation because the state was in dire need for funds. We had an extremely large interest payment that was due. It was around $28 million. We got to looking through our books, what we had and what we could make work, and we saw where we had these state funds that we could supplant with these additional federal funds that we were being able to draw down at that time to help out with the interest payment. And we really kind of intended that to be just a one-year deal. But here we are, 3 years later, and we're still taking that out of our budget. Now, the problem with that is if you go back, just back to FY12 till today, we have lost right around $47 million in federal funds. Matter of fact, if you just look over the last year, we lost an additional $6 million in federal funds, plus we lost a contract with WIA, which cost us another $6 million. Now, we've made a lot of adjustments to the Department of Labor to deal with a lot of these loss in federal funds. We have made cuts. We've found efficiencies. Matter of fact, if you take a look at our employment count inside the Department of Labor, our FTEs, today we are 28% smaller than we were 3 years ago. That's 613 positions that we don't have today that we had 3 years ago. So we've been making the cuts. Now, the net effect of that is you have a lot of career centers around the state that are understaffed. Gainesville is understaffed. Matter of fact, Carrollton is understaffed. That is my home career center. And to give you an example how bad that one's understaffed, if you can compare how many people come into Carrollton, it's actually comparable to the amount of people who go into the career center at Macon, believe it or not. It has to do with where that Carrollton Career Center is located because there's not any other career center that's that close by to it. The only problem is we have about half the staff in Carrollton as we do in Macon. The other problem is going forward because of the fact that we have been losing funds and haven't been able to give our employees raises, our retention rate is not very good. Our turnover rate is over 17%. Now, there's some cautionary tale in here that I want y'all to make aware. I know y'all can't do anything about this right now in this budget year, but going forward, something we really need to be paying attention to. The state's workforce, and mine especially, is getting much older. We are not able, due to the fact that our average pay is a lot less than the average private sector pay is. Matter of fact, it's almost $10,000 a year less. It's really hard to attract and retain talent. If you look at our agency and just look at the individuals that work for us that are 39 years of age or younger, that is only 16% of my workforce. That's a really low number. Matter of fact, if you start looking at where that workforce really is, over 80% of our workforce is over the age of 50. Except Georgia Power pays better than we do. And a matter of fact, I just lost one of my key personnel yesterday. He came in and gave his 2-week notice, and because he got a better job offer somewhere else. And this is going to continue to be a problem going forward. Matter of fact, I have 10% of my workforce is eligible to retire this year. That's another 150 people. So, those types of things are going to get worse and worse and worse, and we're going to have to start looking at what we're doing with benefits, what we're doing with pay. I would really like to be able to retain that $5.7 million for my operations so I can help retain key employees. I need that. Also, furthermore, The handout that I gave you was a bond package that we requested. If you'll look at that, I'll just go over that really quickly. The number one, which is our central office building is around 50 years old. And we need to have some engineering studies done on that building. One of them is our parking deck, which is almost as equal as old. As y'all know, with the parking deck over here, we have some issues. This one is starting to show its age, and we're worried that there could be safety concerns. So we really need to have that looked at. And also, we discovered just through accident this last year that we may be about to run into some plumbing problems inside the building. Like I said, it's 50 years old. We had a small leak in one of the rooms. One of our repair people came up to check it out, and he literally put his finger through the pipe, and it burst. So that's something we need to be looking at too, and we had requested some bond money to do a study to see what we're going to be looking at going forward, because we're probably going to need some money in the future to upgrade. And it's time. It's a 50-year-old building, and most of them, when you get that age, you're going to have to do some maintenance. The other ones, a lot of those are safety features that we need to be that we need to upgrade. We have some parking lots that are in really bad repair, and as all y'all know, and I know some attorneys up here, people fall and trip in bad spots, and in state parking lots, you tend to get a letter from an attorney shortly thereafter. We also have some deferred maintenance issues. Brunswick, I was just down there this last summer, and that heat and air unit definitely needs to be replaced. It was kind of toasty in that office. It gets hot down in Brunswick, as y'all know. And several parking lots that need to be done. And also, we have some security features that we need to change in our central office. We have been given some advice from a USDOL about using some more key card access to make some of our areas more secure, just like you see over here. We don't currently have that system in place. We would like to have that system in place to give ourselves more security. Right now, it's how we're doing most of ours is through armed security guards, which can be very expensive, as you know.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner, you do have a question. Chairman Setzler.
Commissioner, welcome back. Do you have the flexibility from a workforce standpoint to, for example, if you had, just for simplicity, if you had 10 employees at $50,000 a year each, could you, through attrition, go to 6 employees and raise their pay grade from $50,000 to $70,000 to retain talent? Do you have the flexibility within your workforce to do that?
Theoretically, yes, I do. But the problem has been, as we have seen some of our money go down and our attrition go down, I mean, that's been the game plan. Matter of fact, most of our cuts in personnel have been through attrition up until this last summer when we had to do a layoff due to the fact that we had lost some federal funds and also transfer some of our monies that we had through from our office over to Government Workforce Development. We had to make some really quick changes. Matter of fact, we had about 90 days. And most of the cuts that we made there were upper management. The problem is the money is going faster than we can. I mean, I would love to be able to, through this attrition, to build up enough money and then be able to give those raises in those different areas. And we are working toward that. I mean, as we still get smaller and smaller and smaller, I mean, that's what we're trying to do. But the problem is we're losing money at almost as quick a rate as we are in the attrition. So we can't quite get that cushion. Now, what we would love to do is be able to give a 1 or 2% raise. Because you take a look at our frontline staff, the ones that are in your career centers, that starting pay is around $25,000 a year. Now, if you're in Tifton, you can be somewhat competitive. But if you're in DeKalb or if you're in Fulton, then nobody's going to take a $25,000 a year job like that. I mean, you can't retain.
And I asked that question because I know this is a time of real turbulence for you with the changes and things last year, and that may take a couple of years to work out. But I guess from a customer service standpoint, and it's there's only certain economies of scale you can recognize. But as you know, oftentimes if you get a crackerjack $45,000 a year person, the real value they can add is sometimes greater than two or three $25,000 a year people in terms of the skill sets, the problem solving, some of that. And I just want to make sure you've got the flexibility to manage within that.
And trust me, we do that. I mean, we do recognize great talent. We want to keep great talent. Sometimes you don't realize they're being, I say, poached. Like yesterday, I had no idea that one was coming, but we've had others. But you come to a point where if you don't have the money to make those kind of offers, And
every
also
good job that comes by gets grabbed by one of your employees. And stuff.
Right, and plus you also have to deal with inside the office politics. As all y'all know, if you work for state government, I mean, all your salaries are, public record. You can see folks get very angry. Like if this one got a raise, well, why did they get a raise? Well, maybe because this person works really hard and does a really good job. So there's a lot of dynamics you have to take into consideration there. But yes, we do when we can. We do that, but and we have had some help from the governor's office. I mean, one of the things you talk about being able to do more with less. The governor was really, really generous with us this year. We've been trying to get onto a new accounting system, but quite frankly, we couldn't afford to spend the money on it. They helped us and given us the money for that. Otherwise, we couldn't make that. And there's some other things we'd like to do technology-wise, which we could get more bang for the buck, and we could survive on a lot lower FTE. But then again, you have to have that money also.
And I just ask that, and Madam Chair, when you go through big restructurings, sometimes it prompts you to do things that otherwise would be hard to do, maybe organizationally, in normal times. And I know with the technology that's out there, I do think I hear from our taxpayers that I don't sense that my constituents want state employees to be $20,000 underfunded for what they do. I just think they want folks that will deliver and be high impact performers. And maybe this I was just asking if this transition period for you is a time that could facilitate that. So.
Well, and we have done a lot of. Matter of fact, we did a major restructuring last year. Matter of fact, I tell people, I said our organization used to look like this. Now it looks like this. I mean, we cut out a lot of middle management. Matter of fact, if you looked at how many people you had to go through to get to me from a career center, it used to be about 6. Now it's like 2. And so we try to keep as many of our frontline staff in place, cut as much middle management out as we could, saved a lot of money, but still, we're still playing catch up and we're going to lose more federal money this next year. Matter of fact, we are speculating right now, based upon what we're seeing come out of Washington, at a minimum, we're going to lose an additional $6 million this year. But we have to wait and see. I mean, that's a guessing game, and y'all got just about as good a guess as I do on that one. It could be twice that amount.
Okay, I don't see any other questions at this time. Thank you so much, and thank you for being here and waiting.
Sure, no
I
problem.
appreciate it. Thank you for the work you're doing. Representative Epps, could you hand us that sheet that's on the corner right there for some public testimony? Okay, it looks like we have about 8 people who are signed up for today. I don't have the list for tomorrow, but y'all are here, so I certainly want you to have the time. It is a little after 4:30, and while we have the room till 5, perhaps we can stay just a little bit longer. But let's try to be as brief as possible. If you have information that you've brought today, or if you want to give us something that we can copy also and make available to the committee, that would be great. So first, Nora Haynes.
I'll wait a minute till y'all get those passed out. I'm Nora Lott Haynes, and I'm here representing NAMI Savannah, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and also the 4 community service boards in Region 5, which is around the Savannah area. That includes Pineland, Gateway, Unison in Waycross, and I just forgot the other one. That was really good. I'm here to ask you to consider funding Phase 2 of the Opening Doors to Recovery project. This is a project that was begun funding in 2010, and the Bristol-Myers Squibb Foundation put about $2 million in the project. The project, it was designed to figure out ways to keep people with serious and persistent mental illness from recycling in and out of the state hospital. So on the flip side of your sheet shows after 3 years of this research project with 100 people with serious and persistent mental illness, we almost cut the recidivism rate in half. We are now going to start on phase 2 of the Opening Doors to Recovery project, which will be a continuation of the research. We will study 100 people with serious and persistent mental illness who have been in prison, and we will figure out ways to keep them from recidivizing in and out of the prison system. So you told me to be brief. I could stand up here for an hour and talk to you about all the details of the Opening Doors to Recovery project, but I don't think you want me to do that. So,
well, let's see if there are any questions at all from any of the members.
And Middle Georgia is the other CSB in Dublin.
I don't see any lights.
Okay.
We will take it, and I think that also means that you've done a good job of speaking to each of us and helping us be informed. So thank you.
And I appreciate what y'all do. My grandfather was a senator, and I used to love to come up here and sit by him and see all the wonderful things that you guys do. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Next, Steve Corder with SPAD.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Steve Corder, and I'm here speaking as a representative of the Service Providers Association for Georgia. And we have just passed out or are passing out a folder to you which has some of the detailed information I'll run over quickly. And the first thing you'll see is a picture of one of the consumers whom we serve. And I know that Madam Chairman, as well as at least a couple of the others, have visited programs in the community and seen some of the services that we do provide. We represent currently over 8,000 people that are in community services. And when Commissioner Barry was here and talked about the people that are coming out of the hospital, compared to what's already in the community, that's somewhat a low number. And we speak on behalf also of about 10,000 employees that work in the direct service provision within our field. And so we have quite a few Georgians whom we touch directly, and probably the number of families and others we touch indirectly too is quite a number of individuals within Georgia. I too want to thank several of you I know came by our informational meeting the first week of the session this year and got a little bit of information from us, and we do appreciate that. I wanted to emphasize today we have met with the DBHDD Commissioner, Commissioner Barry, which he alluded to, and he further alluded to that they support us getting an increase. And we met with his assistant commissioners as well as him on a number of occasions, and for a lot of reasons which you all understand far better than I do, an increase for us was not included in the budget this year. Two of the other waivered programs that are under the DCH management instead of the DBHDD management, and again, I think maybe you understand that better than I do, did receive a 5% increase this year. And that is basically what our plea is to you. And I tell some of my colleagues and folks I'm involved with in Rotary and so forth that we have not had an increase in 25 years, and they don't believe me. They said you can't do your business if you haven't had an increase in 25 years. We had 3% increase in 2003, which we funded. The providers gave up pure state dollars, grant and aid dollars, to provide the match money that pulled down the federal dollars to give us that increase. So we have had no net increase since 1989, when the first waivered programs went into effect in the community. And again, we certainly support and are delighted that we're seeing somewhat better economic times. I was delighted when I read the December figures on state increases in revenue and so forth. And we too, I mean, we're pulling for our state employees, the policemen, the teachers, and the other Georgians who have seen and are getting some benefit. And we, too, don't take away from the 2 waivers that got it. But what we would ask and what we sorely need in order to give value to these individuals that we do serve is if you could see fit to allow a 5% increase for our waivers. And again, it's been a considerable amount of time that we have gone without. And I think we survive. I'm a financial and business person. Most of the people here, and Commissioner mentioned Diane Willis, are very involved directly in the programs. And I have a degree of that, but I am primarily involved in our company's financial work and work with the SPAD Association with some of the financial figures. And I have an MBA in finance and economics, and am absolutely amazed we've stayed in business 25 years. And we've done it through efficiencies, I think through some growth, but we are very hesitant to add additional people into the program in an underfunded rate. So again, we would very much appreciate your consideration and thoughtful consideration. You'll be getting, hopefully, from individuals within your district, a postcard. And again, this will be bright and hopefully catch your attention that we touch 270,000 Georgian, which is the families, the places of employment somebody asked about earlier. We have quite a few people with community jobs. We have other people that go to centers. We employ 10,000 Georgians again, so we have a lot of people working for us that typically are very low paid, and they are not paid enough for the jobs they do. They do their jobs out of a dedication of service. So if you'd look through these, if you have any questions, I could certainly attempt to answer those or get help from some of my colleagues that are here.
Thank you. Chairman Setzler.
Madam Chair, at the risk of wearing out my microphone, I just this is our chance to have these conversations. I appreciate your indulgence. As I've observed and sort of delved into my community into services provided, I'd like. Would you be open to as we contemplate an increase in provider fees, some, I don't know if the word's contract clauses that could ensure that the money flows to direct service delivery?
I think we would certainly agree to that. Much of and in my company, and of course I can't speak for all the individual organizations and company, we would certainly reward the front line workers. Now, that's not to say we could give it all to them, because we too have the oversight we have is onerous. The 2 highest people we have paid in our agency currently is the quality director and the director of nursing, 2 positions which 12 years ago we didn't have. So it's very difficult to say it all go to frontline people, because we are subject to probably 7 different entities that audit us, and very strict auditing guidelines and measures, and it's we have required a great deal of increased overhead.
Here's my concern, and I understand the idea that what a pass down means. And when we build a business model, you have a pro forma that says, hey, for the the person that comes by in the van and picks people up in a small home setting and takes them out and gives them community and time out in the community, the business model says, hey, we're going to assume a $14 an hour person based on benefits, and in rural Georgia, a $14 an hour person with benefits gives us a profile of a certain skill set. That same person in Metro Atlanta may be a $17 an hour person with benefits, and I know there's some flexibility across the state. But if we as a legislature, fund a level of effort for a certain program, or we as a state do, the expectation of a $14 an hour person with benefits in rural Georgia gets you a certain skill set. Now, if what we're getting is because of market conditions and constraints on budgets, and hey, people a person that's got whatever training needed, who's willing to take people and do that same job for $9.75 an hour without benefits, or $10 an hour without benefits, is willing to take that job, there are market forces that will drive any business, any provider to say, well, hey, I can hire this person for $10 an hour, provide them no benefits, and they can safely take people out in the community. But the difference is, if we're paying for a $14 an hour person with benefits, we get a higher level of service and care for the people that are being cared for. And what I see happening across the system, and I'm not pointing the fingers at any one particular provider, but I know it exists in the system, that we've got a pro forma that's built around a certain skill set level of person. But what's being delivered, the kind of care, the kind of service we're getting, the kind of skill we're getting, does not match what we're paying for. And as we consider an increase in rates, I'm certainly sensitive to that. But what I'm also sensitive to is when you're hiring professional services, someone's not supplying and furnishing an air conditioner. They're not supplying and furnishing a building that meets specifications. It is a level of service and a skill set and a quality of service can't be commoditized in the same way. It's the nature of professional services. Just like we as a state, when we hire engineers to do work on the state capitol, we don't hire engineers on a low bid basis. We hire engineers based on quality, and once we pick the most qualified person, we negotiate a fee around that, because professional services are inherently different everywhere. And I say that, that I would just offer, Madam Chair, to the committee, as we contemplate an increase that's probably well needed, that there be a level of confidence that we're getting the kind of service we're paying for, because I don't think that's happening today. And that's not to put anyone on the spot, and that can apply across outside of just your business. But I've gotten some specific examples from some people in our community and other communities that there is an emerge, because the nature of market forces drive this. There is a tendency towards lower skilled people providing services, and I think there's an impact on service delivery.
Well, and I think we as providers wholeheartedly would agree that we are forced to a labor market where we're competing with individuals who could work at McDonald's, work at Kroger, Publix, and make comparable wages. And oftentimes we lose people to that. And, when you look and some of the statistics that are in your package, the minimum wage went up 116% during this 30-year time frame. The cost of employee benefits has gone up 146%. And those do affect us. Even if you take out benefits which you give by choice, such as medical and dental coverage, many of your benefits are statutory benefits. And, of course, we've endured those increases. And the consumer price index, which we all refer to as the cost of living, has gone up 88% since '89. And again, we've had no increase, and we consequently, probably the biggest problem we have is being able to hire and being able to retain good employees. Many of our employees do it solely for the love of the business. And I know Representative Dempsey, Representative Oliver's quite familiar with some of the programs that have seen this, and they've seen the people that do it. And I wish we could pay them all what I think they're worth. I really do. And right now, we are so far behind in our funding and our needed increased funding that it's going to take quite a while and quite a number of increases. You look at all the statistics, we ought to be asking for an 80% increase, which everybody realizes that's not a realistic thing to come ask for. So what we have settled on is to ask for a 5% increase. And even the commissioner says, absolutely you need it. And, we felt that was a reasonable amount. And I think most of the providers would certainly, to the degree they could, reward their frontline staff and the direct caregivers. Now, and I will say we still will not pay them what they're worth and what we ought to be able to pay them. because with the 5% increase, even if we gave every nickel to them, it wouldn't pay them what they ought to be being paid. We lose people now to nursing homes because they can pay better than we did. Nursing homes had a 16% increase last year, just last year. And again, we in this field, probably serving an equally needy and very deserving population, had no increase. We had to fight tooth and nail, if you remember, 2 years ago to stop a 3% decrease in our budget. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't
Madam
see
Chairman.
any questions, and I have been there, and I have seen what you're doing, and I do appreciate it. Thank you for bringing us
so
this
much.
information. Next, Dawn Alford.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Madam Chair and committee members. I appreciate that opportunity to speak for you today. I won't hold you long. My name is Dawn Alford. I am the Planning and Policy Specialist with the Georgia Council on Developmental Disabilities, and I want to talk with you, just highlight our three main funding priorities, and then you have a packet in front of you, and the majority of it is summarized on this blue bookmark on the back side where it says the DBHDD request. And then we have in your packet some more detailed information that delves in deeper. The one thing that's not on the bookmark is we have a request, and it's actually a request from the Georgia Inclusive Post-Secondary Education Consortium, which is a bunch of organizations that are working together to support post-secondary inclusive education. And essentially, there is post-secondary inclusive education is for students with intellectual and developmental disabilities who would not otherwise have an opportunity to pursue secondary education to be able to do so. There is currently one program for that in Georgia at Kennesaw State University. You may know your colleague Senator Miller's son, Charlie, is one of their students, and he has a great quote in here. But our request essentially is that you support the governor's recommended budget. We had gotten $100,000 in the fiscal year 14 budget, $100,000, and the governor did put that in his proposed budget to continue that $100,000 of funding, and that is in the Georgia Council on Developmental Disabilities budget, which is a sub-item within the DBHDD budget. And our ask for this is an additional $200,000, essentially to expand this program within Georgia. And there is a breakdown of how we propose that funding be used on the back of the second handout that you have. The second priority that I'd like to discuss with you is something that we have been talking about today, supported employment. There is also a bunch of organizations, a coalition, that are working together on supported employment. One of my colleagues, Elizabeth Apley, who is representing AADD, is going to also speak to you about this request as well. And we are supported employment, again, going back to the question earlier that you asked about helping those individuals who are leaving high school to be able to transition into the workforce. And that is essentially what supported employment helps folks to do. It helps them to find competitive employment in an integrated community setting at a rate where their fellow folks without disabilities doing the same job get that same pay rate. And that is what supported employment does. And so our ask for that is for $1.96 million, which would fund supported employment for 250 individuals, again, targeting those youth leaving high school, being able to catch them at that stage. And we know for a fact that folks that do work, that for every dollar that we invest in Georgia into supported employment, we get a return on our investment of I believe that is, I'm sorry, I just lost that number. It's 1.61, $1.61 in benefits on that. So that is our request for supported employment. And third, you all are probably already familiar with the very successful housing voucher program that has worked on the mental health side. And essentially, we don't have these type vouchers for the folks with developmental disabilities. There is not currently a way for folks with developmental disabilities to be able to live in their own home if they choose. They could live in a host home or another person's home, but they don't have a way to live in their own home or apartment if they choose. And so our ask for that is that you would consider funding $480,000 for 100 housing vouchers to support those individuals with developmental disabilities to live in their own home. Again, this is summarized on the blue bookmark that you have. We also support, of course, the Department of Justice Settlement Agreement funding, and we thank you for your continued support of that, as well as thank you for your continued support of the other recommendations of the governor's proposed budget for the additional 250 waivers, as well as the annualization of the 250 waivers from last year, the family support dollars. And then finally, we also would support the 5% provider rate increase that I believe you'll be hearing a lot about as well. So thank you for your time. I would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Are there any questions? I don't see any, and this is a great bit of information for us to look at and understand.
Absolutely, and I would be happy. My contact information is on here, and if any of you have any specific questions, I'd be happy to meet with you one-on-one and address any questions or concerns that you may have. Thank you for your time, Madam Chair.
I applaud your commitment. You're here every day. Next, Stephen Neff.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the committee, I'll be brief. I come before you to ask you to continue your support of the governor's proposed budget. I have the privilege of representing the Assisted Living Association as well as the Georgia Association of Community Care Providers, both of which provide services in the community. We feel very fortunate that the governor has decided to fund the ALS, which is Alternative Living Services, or the personal care home, and the personal support services, which is the home care side. I do represent the majority of the home and community-based service providers, so obviously our interest from all of my membership would be all the other services as well, but we do understand the limited funds that are with that, and I've had discussions with OPB and the governor's office about that. We would certainly support any other provider rate increases, developmental disability, ICWP, any of the other that have been mentioned, if therefore were any possibility for those to be funded. But we would ask you to please consider supporting the governor's provider rate increases as he has done at this point. So point being, we would hope that you all would be able to support that those two without and any extra money that could be done without taking away from those that the governor has taken an opportunity to support.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Rennie? I don't see any lights.
Thank you all very much.
So much.
I appreciate it, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Charles Harper.
Thank you for the opportunity to let me share a couple of things with you. Y'all heard a lot of good speakers, and I'm not one of them. I'm just a dumb old boy from Douglas, Georgia, that just happens to be engaging in the developmental disability business. I own 2 group homes. When Commissioner Berry was talking about providers, you're looking at him. Owning 2 group homes, I don't have but 2 people in my organization makes $14 an hour, and I'm not one of them. I made $1,778 total profit last year in the DD business. I'm a businessman. I'd like to make a profit so I can keep my doors open. I'm not up here begging for money, but I'd like to ask y'all to consider a rate increase for us. Unemployment insurance has gone up. Liability insurance has gone up. 5 years ago, I could feed 4 people in a group home for $150 a week. That price is currently $247 a week. We have the ramifications of the Affordable Care Act. We have the possible ramifications of a minimum wage increase. If we don't get some help, the bottom line is while you guys are up here considering how to spend the money like we asked you to come up here and do, we sent y'all up here. What you're going to have to do in reality is figure out where you're going to put these people. Feds say you got to close the state hospitals. I'm currently developing one of those group homes to take a medically fragile population out, 4 people. And you might say, well, if business is that bad, why are you doing it? Because there's more money. There is more funding available for hospital transitions than there are for the typical DD population out here. These folks didn't ask to be born like this. They did not get in this condition because they were dope addicts. They didn't have a 4-wheeler accident. They're here. We got to take care of them. And if at some point in time we don't get a little bit of help, y'all got to, maybe you need to add on to your house like I told Commissioner Reese, DCH, because they got to go somewhere. But thank you for your time.
Thank you, and thank you for your work. Elizabeth Apley.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, my name is Elizabeth Apley, and I'm speaking to you this afternoon on behalf of AADD, All About Developmental Disabilities, and I'm here with Lisa Elrod, who's also available to answer questions. Lisa is a foster parent to a young man, Danny, who was born with profound developmental disabilities. She is a longtime special education teacher and advocate for people with developmental disabilities, and now works in transition planning and helps children with developmental disabilities planning for leaving high school. The commissioner spoke to you about the 4 people he was proud to see working at the aquarium just across the park. One of them is my cousin, and I remember when Jay was born. I remember when his family learned that he had a developmental disability. And I remember the experience of his parents struggling over the years to make sure that he had a free, appropriate public education. And I also remember the crisis they felt amid the pride of his finishing high school after many long years of what next? Is Jay going to come home and sit on the couch? And it was year after year after year amid a waiting list that now stands at 7,000 people that Jay waited to get a waiver. Finally, he did get a waiver. And as a result of the services he received through that waiver, he received a job at the aquarium thanks to the benefit of supportive employment, working side by side with people without developmental disabilities, earning a competitive wage, loving his work, and being appreciated for the great value he provides to his employer there and to the school children who come and that he guides. And so we're asking for $1.9 million in the BHDD budget to fund supportive employment. 20 years ago, Georgia was a leader in the country, among the top 10 in the provision of supported employment services. We've had a precipitous drop-off, and now we are at the bottom. We are not adequately funding these programs. And so we're representing a broad coalition that Dawn spoke so eloquently to you about, and asking you to look at this population. It's not just Jay who's leaving high school with no place to go but home. It's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of children every year. What we're proposing is a $1.96 million ask in state money that will be able to be leveraged with federal dollars. Once we get an amendment to the Medicaid waiver, you're looking at a 3-to-1 federal-state match. And with the VR dollars that can be available to identify these young adults, to match them with employment, to get them adapted on the job, and to provide that first 90 days of support, we're talking about a 4-to-1 federal-state match. But in order to succeed, when we're talking about a population with intellectual and developmental disabilities, they need that long-term support funding. And so there's a long list of employers who have been happy to join the ranks of competitive employers providing employment for people with developmental disabilities. That includes AutoZone and Walgreens, Turner, Publix, Home Depot, and many others, because the value that these people provide on the job is not just one of the heart. It's a real bottom line service. And so if you wonder what it looks like or what it feels like to have a person with profound developmental disabilities working side by side, I'll remind many of you who were here and worked many years with Wiley Nixon. 35 years Wiley was at the Capitol delivering services as our postmaster, and he was a highly valued employee, a contributing member of the legislative team, and we miss him to this day. So this is a win for the state. As Dawn said, every dollar we invest in supported employment brings back $1.61, because these folks are not at home sitting on the couch. They're working, they're paying taxes, and the likelihood of their facing long-term dependency on state dollars is diminished. It's a win for these employers, and we know it's a win for these folks who have the opportunity to live and work and engage in the community just as we want for all of us and for all of our children. So thank you very much. You all are leaders in advocating for our folks, and we hope that you'll be able to fund this item.
Thank you. Are there any questions? We've left us with some great information, so I think probably that will answer all the questions. Good. And thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. I was looking, Joe Newton, I don't believe he's here. I was looking. That was the last of our speakers for today. So if there's no further business to come before the committee, we will adjourn and see y'all again tomorrow for our second hearing. Thank you so much.